Good day to all. We are certainly living in historically challenging times these days as we begin our journey through 2021. I'm sure that a year ago, not many of us could have ever predicted this worldwide pandemic or the insurrection at the Capitol last week or another impeachment just yesterday. It all does seem kind of surreal. And there's a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety that we're all facing. And we certainly need our faith, and we need each other during these perilous days. I recently read an article on Michael J. Fox by Elizabeth Egan, and she entitled her article, "When It Comes to Living with Uncertainty, Michael J. Fox is a Pro." You must remember him from Family Ties and Back to the Future. When he was only 29 years old in 1991, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He had to semi-retire in 2000. And it's been a very difficult journey for this very vibrant young man. He actually had to learn to walk again. But throughout all of it, he's been a model of such great hope, of never giving up. Through the years, he's been encouraging so many people who had Parkinson's, but also people who found themselves in all kinds of difficulties to never give up. During these years, in the beginning, he wrote three different memoirs with great titles like Lucky Man, Always Looking Up, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Future. Then 2 years ago, he had surgery for the removal of a benign brain tumor on his spine. And then he fell in his apartment, had 19 pins and a plate put in his arm, needed to be in a wheelchair. And at that time, he had a crisis of conscience about his memoirs and what he was saying to people. He said, I tell people it's all going to be okay, and it might just suck. So he started to wonder if he had oversold the idea of hope in these first three memoirs. So he reflected on it and wrote another memoir and entitled it No Time Like the Future. And he wrote about his new outlook because of all that he's been through. And as Elizabeth Egan wrote, she wrote, "The actor and the activist opens up about his newfound, uniquely upbeat brand of pessimism." And then Bob Miller wrote about this latest memoir. Bob Miller is the publisher of Flatiron and a very good friend of Michael J. Fox. And he said that No Time Like the Future is a more wistful, thoughtful, and quiet reflection. It's a thinking person's book about how you continue to find meaning through hard times. That's the challenge for us. How we continue to find meaning through hard times. In the memoir, Michael J. Fox writes about being in a wheelchair, how frustrating an experience that can be, how isolating it can be, allowing someone else to determine the direction that I'm going and the rate of speed that I can travel, he says. He says, the pusher is in charge. We no longer are. He said, generally, the person in control is a stranger, an airport or a hotel employee. I'm sure that if we could look at each other in the eye, we'd recognize our mutual humanity. But often in the wheelchair, I'm luggage. I'm not expected to say much. Just sit still. Later he adds, no one listens to luggage. Wow, that's really expressing how frustrating and anxiety producing it has been and continues to be for him. And yet then he comes to this realization. He says that I basically come down to, with gratitude, optimism becomes sustainable. So in the midst of all that he's going through, he finds things to be grateful for. And that's our challenge too. In the midst of all that's going on now, we have to be grateful people. We have to find things to be grateful for. He also reflected on the pandemic and the issues going on politically. Being a Canadian citizen, he's often been asked why he doesn't just go back to Canada. And he said this, he says, I built a life here and became a citizen so I could vote. And now I want to be here to help fix what's going on. He said, he said, there's a cleansing happening. Things are going to get better. Well, that's one interesting, optimistic way to look at things. With the pandemic, there's a cleansing going on. With the political issues in Washington, there's a cleansing going on. With our church crises, there's a cleansing going on. And things are going to get better. We have to believe that. That's the kind of faith that we need, and we have to share that with one another. And Michael J. Fox certainly has been a model for all of us. And as he writes, in that one of the memoirs at the very beginning, a funny thing happened on the way to the future. Well, these aren't funny things that have happened to us. The pandemic, the political issues, the church crises are not funny things that happened on the way to the future. They're very, very challenging things that happened on the way to the future. So we have to believe with Michael J. Fox that there is a cleansing happening. Things are going to get better. So let us strengthen our faith in our God, but also our faith in one another, our connection to one another. Let us believe as Michael J. Fox believes. With gratitude, optimism becomes sustainable. Let us continue to pray for each other, that we stay strong and healthy and safe as far as the pandemic. And let us pray now, especially during these next few days, as we have this inauguration coming on the 20th of January, and that it will be peaceful for our entire nation. That we can come together as citizens and be connected to one another and have a wonderfully democratic nation. So peace to all of you, and let us pray for each other, for our nation, our church, for the health of our world. Peace.